Hello and welcome to How to Learn a Language. Yes, the name says it all. I'm Lindsay of Lindsay Does Languages, the language-obsessed coach with an MA in Applied Linguistics and a penchant for reggaeton who's always learning languages, discovering more about how we learn them, and sharing that with you and my clients. I'm here to help you learn languages better, any language, any level. On this podcast, you'll get jargon-free linguistics insights to level up your fluency, practical mindset tips to tackle those inevitable language wobbles, personal language diaries where I share my own progress and honest experiences, and an exclusive peek behind the scenes of Language Life, my coaching program that helps people speak fearlessly and intuitively by taking control of their learning without pressure or one-size-fits-all methods. If you're ready to break free from perfectionism and finally start speaking the language you want, you're in the right place. Welcome back to How to Learn a Language. Today we are answering the question, can you travel the world with just English? Because, let's be honest, with Google Translate and English being such a lingua franca, it is easy to wonder if it's actually worth bothering. Well, last year I was traveling a lot, basically all year, in Lithuania, Egypt, India, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Singapore, Korea and Japan. I used English in every country, but to different amounts. So the short answer to that question is, yes, you can. But there's a but, and there's a big but, and that's what we're going to talk about. So the first thing is that there is not one English. And I feel like a year where you're traveling and two of those countries are India and Singapore, big proof of this. There's also, by the way, no one variety that is better than any others. For example, I love, one of my favourite examples is the Australian word for flip-flops being thongs, right? Because here in British English, that means kind of skimpy G-string style underwear, right? So, if an Australian is on the beach looking around for their flip-flops, where are my thongs? That to me would be very funny. But like I say, some places that I spent a lot of time last year, India and Singapore mainly, they do speak English, but it is different. So at least as a British English speaker, I'll be understood in those places and in most places that speak English, and I'll understand, mostly. But that only happens when I'm willing to be flexible with my language. So for more on this, you can listen. I did a whole episode about what traveling in India taught me about learning languages and languages in general. I'll link to that in the show notes in the description. So definitely have a listen to that if you're curious on more on this. But yeah, there is not one English. Like when we say you can travel with English, yes, you can, but there's going to be some flexibility needed in terms of, what that means and how you'll be understood and how you expect to understand. The second thing, yeah, you can travel with English, but you will feel like such a better traveller when you have something, at least, in the local language. So maybe it's just me, but I do think if you're here and you're listening to this, I think it's probably you too. I feel so much more respectful when I'm not just relying on English, especially I feel this, and I don't know, maybe if you're not a native English speaker, you can answer me on this. I do feel that as a native English speaker, I feel this even more, this kind of guilt of people resorting to my language because it's not an in-between. It's not a lingua franca for me. It's my default, right? And I know that it can be annoying sometimes when people default and immediately resort to English as soon as they realize that you're not fluent. But it is a little more reassuring when that happens, that you can at least end the interaction with a very sincere thank you in their language. I remember in Lithuania, the train station staff, there were really good staff at the train stations, very fluent in English, very, very helpful. And I loved that they would help get the ticket. And then, I'd be able to say to them, thank you in Lithuanian at the end, at least. I would try and get other bits in during the interaction, but at least if I could say thank you at the end. And what I really love is that in Lithuanian, thank you is sounds like a sneeze. It's achu. So to sort of end an interaction with that is always quite funny. But you just feel like, okay, I've made a bit more of an effort. It's quite calming for yourself. Point number 3 on this. You will be limiting yourself if you think that you can just get by with English. If you go somewhere and you only know English, first of all, you'll be much more likely to avoid that restaurant just off the main drag without a translated or picture menu. I used to actually say that picture menus were an indicator of where not to eat when you're abroad, but I have learned that in some places that is the default. I mean, in Japan, even, the plastic food is not just a photo, it is like a 3D display, and that is very helpful as a traveler if you don't speak fluent Japanese. But it also means that it's not just, oh yeah, picture menu equals bad food, because there's some cultural differences there. So, I've come a long way from my kind of narrow thoughts on that. But not every Japanese restaurant has plastic food displays or picture menus, and some don't have English menus. And if you think, oh, I'm gonna, I'm not gonna bother to learn the language, I'm gonna be fine with English, it's only a week or 2 weeks or whatever, you'll be missing out on so much potential. You're really limiting yourself on where you could eat. So one of my favorite meals in Japan was in this kind of vegan ramen place. They had like an old vending machine out the front that, if you've ever been to Japan, you'll know what I mean. The type where it has a sort of menu item and then the button underneath. And so you just press the button for what you want. And it's a like click, and then you put your money in, and then you've ordered and you get your little ticket, right? So it had one of them out front, no English on it. And then I see the guy poke his head out the window. He's like, hello, didn't speak any English, but really willing to help. And so it was great to be able to do that with just sort of limited reading Japanese ability and get a good meal. And it was so good. It was such a good food, such a great experience. I think food is one of the real treats of Japan. And if you're just limiting yourself to where you can read the menu, that's a shame. There's some good opportunities to be had. So you don't want to limit yourself. And also the moments that you have when you've maybe said hello to a stranger, like you're watching a parade or a festival. I remember in Sri Lanka, it was like in the beach town of Marissa, there was a homestay place that I was staying at, and that night of arriving was quite crazy because the train station's a little far out of town, and then you sort of walk down and then you're like, why is everyone walking away? What's happening? And it turns out there was this big parade. So you arrive, put stuff in the room, and then head back out. And it's like, whoa, the streets were full. There's like fire breathers, everything going on. And being able to sort of stand there with the host from the homestay. And, she didn't speak much English. I didn't speak much Sinhala, but we spoke enough of each other's languages, not just enough of her English, not just relying on that, but enough of each other's language for me to say, this is good, or this is really great, wow, and point and say, so cool, that sort of thing. Like those little moments that, yeah, you can do without any language, but it is just so much richer if you've got a few words to deal with. And I think really the final point that I want to make on this is that it's not about needing to learn the language. It is about choosing. So it's not just a case of thinking, well, can I get by? Do I need to learn the language, or will I be fine with English? Maybe I'll be limiting myself, whatever, but will I be fine? Yeah, okay, whatever, I'll go, right? So yeah, you could travel the world with just English, but for all the reasons that I've mentioned so far. So yeah, you could travel the world with just English, but for all the reasons that I've mentioned, it might not be as good. And there's one final point too. And when we consider that final point there, that learning a language doesn't have to just be a need, it can be a choice. It just opens up, takes the pressure off. Like, we're not thinking, I need to learn this language to level X, right? Or I don't need to learn, so I'm not going to bother. What if you chose to do it instead? I always compare this with exercise. So I really have to want to do the exercise. The need is not enough. If I'm thinking like, oh, the default advice is you need to do 20 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day or 150 minutes a week, whatever they've decided is the latest at the time of recording, right? That need isn't enough. I have to want to do what I'm going to do for that exercise to actually get it done. So that choice to learn a language for any reason has to be yours, at least on some level, for it to be something that lasts. If you want to learn a new language for travel, step one is picking something to use to get you started. And that can take hours going down internet rabbit holes, browsing bookshops, reading app reviews. You don't have time for that when you want to learn a language from scratch, fast, for travel possibly. You've not got long before the trip, right? So let me do that before you, right? I already have. The ultimate language resource list is everything that you need to get started in hundreds of languages. It's just been fully updated and it is now easier to use than ever. It's searchable. You can filter by language, level, type, or even just search a keyword to see what comes up. Honestly, it's always my first port of call when I need a new language, especially for travel, where if I'm going somewhere like Sri Lanka, where there's not a lot of obvious resources that come straight to mind, I will check this list. I will check my own free list that I've made for you to see, okay, what is there on here for this language? Where am I going? Okay, what's the language? And I'll have a look. It's so good. So save yourself that time that you can then spend learning a language from scratch, fast, for your trip, and get your copy of the list today. It is completely free. The link is in the description, or you can head to your browser right now on your phone and type in lindsaydoeslanguages.com/list. And if this sparked something for you, I would love to hear about it. You can email me, lindsay@doeslanguages.com, or share this episode with a friend who's working through something similar. And I'll be back soon. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to How to Learn a Language. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're ready to take your language learning to the next level and speak with confidence without the pressure of perfectionism, check out Language Life. You can find all the details and join at lindsaydoeslanguages.com/LL. And if you want the first free step today, head to lindsaydoeslanguages.com/free video to get started with a fresh way to learn languages. Until next time, stay fearless, stay curious, so you can learn languages your way.